My name is Eric Seidel. I had the pleasure of starting the Flutter project about 10 years ago. So I've been a software engineer a very long time, got a few gray hairs along the way. As I said, I had the luck of starting the Flutter project 10 years ago. I used to lead the team and led Flutter and Dart at Google until I left about 2 years ago when I started a new company. You may not know, I did a bunch of other engineering. I worked on web browsers and stuff before Flutter. But as I said, these days I run a different company, Shorebird, which I'm not really going to be talking about today, but I'd be a bad leader if I didn't at least mention it. We have built a code push solution for Flutter, so you can update instantly. You got a bug, it's fixed now, as opposed to days later. Instant updates on your schedule, just like all the big apps do. You can check it out there if you're interested. Works great. So today I'm going to talk about Flutter and its era of business and tell somewhat of a coming of age story. Flutter from its very inception to the framework and product that we know and love today. So we're going to talk about a little how we got here, the things that we saw along the way. We're going to talk about where we are business. I'm going to opine a little bit about things that might come in the future, and happy to take any questions, or I'll be around all week. So how we got here. I have roughly divided our time together into 3 big phases: the exploring phase, the building phase, and what I think about now as the business phase of Flutter. Exploring, I talk about as being the first 4 years of the project, which was felt like a very short time, but it was a very long time. This was from when we first thought about what we were doing to when we shipped beta. And we really just had no idea what we were building. It's not that we didn't try. We did a lot of exploring. I guess I should start by saying happy birthday. 10 years ago today, I was getting married, but after that, we came back and we started Flutter. The very first public commit was a month from now, where we moved from our little experimental repository into the public sphere and started what was then called Sky. Actually, before that, we had spent many years sort of coming to the point of Flutter. I'm not actually going to talk about that in this talk, but I gave a different talk on that if you're ever interested. It was called Razor for a while, where we took a Razor to Chrome. Flutter started from Chrome, and we tried to cut away all the slow parts to see if there was something interesting underneath it. Turns out there was. It was 20 times faster. That was enough to get the attention of the CEO of Google at the time, and we got a splash of funding, and that was then what became Flutter. We ended up not being the web. We built 3 copies of it in JavaScript, et cetera, et cetera. As I said, I talk more about it in another talk, which is there. After that sort of very, very, very initial phase of exploration, there was this long phase of just trying to build a thing that worked, that we could imagine, people using. We were this demo phase. And this is maybe like the first 9 months of the project. Our excitement at this point was we had a spinning green square, right? A little different from multiple conferences all over the world, in enterprise applications. We linked up with the Dart team at this point in time. We lost a bunch of our initial founding team because they wanted to work on the web, and we ended up building something different. We had cut away so much of the product from Chrome that we had to add things back. The moment you add things back, you're not the web. Or at least you're 3 years away from being the web. At this phase, we were still using markup, if you can imagine this. It was still server vended, like you would connect over HTTPS to a Sky app. We had a shake to reload, which we quickly dropped. Then there was a long phase, and this was probably another year, maybe more, of just trying to make a thing that we ourselves wanted to use, that we wanted to carry in our own pockets. We built a stocks application. We hooked up with another team. There was a game company, a game conversion company, took an iOS game and made it an Android game that was acquired by Google and joined the Flutter team. we just built a whole bunch of stuff trying to make it so that we wanted to use the application. We had to figure out branding. We eventually found the Flutter name. It took us a little while to find the Flutter logo as well. Eventually, and again, this is probably almost 2 years probably into the project, we started having other teams inside Google who were brave enough to try this. There were a couple before Google Fiber. And we actually haven't talked about Google Fiber very much in the past because it never shipped. Google Fiber, the project, was canceled before the Flutter rewrite ever went out the door. But they rewrote their set-top boxes. They had previously used Dart on the server on these set-top boxes, so they were comfortable with Dart, and they rewrote. We learned so much from all of these. We worked with another project that got canceled, probably 2 or 3 before this that all got canceled. Anyways, another project that did actually ship, but this never shipped publicly, was the CRM app. This has been talked about publicly. You can actually watch a public talk on it. This was maybe used by 1,000 people inside Google. This was another huge learning experience for us. We had to build a charting library. We had to, work on iOS. So the original, we'd worked some on iOS before. The original reason was that they were trying to write an iOS app to accompany their existing Android app. And it was an interesting learning experience for us because, and maybe one of the first signals that we had something people were really going to want, is that the one engineer or 2 engineers they had play with this idea ended up being faster writing the app than the whole rest of the team. And so a couple months in, they switched the entire team over to Flutter because they had had so much success with it. This was our first really positive sign. The first public app was a beer app. Some of you may recognize this. This was a very long time ago. You actually know this, the team that built this app, because this was not VGV at the time. They had a different name. But it was this set of people who would then become VGV. Posse. They were called Posse. And this led to a next miracle for Flutter, which was through VGV, the Hamilton contract, which VGV obviously poured tons of engineering effort into. Flutter and Google spent tons of engineering effort. We had to build so much for this. We had to build crash reporting. We had to build camera. We had to build Firebase. All just to make this possible. And here we're getting towards the end of that first 4 years. When we announced beta, which was at the end of the 4 years, this was the best we had. This was the best in class of Flutter applications. You had Hamilton, which obviously was something. You had a random Finnish startup who might still be with us, I don't know. And you had our demo app. That was it. And this is the reason why I'm telling you all this, is to lay the contrast between, man, it's so nice to see all these faces in the crowd, between the time that was and the time that is now. Like, this is what we were announcing 4 years into the project, right? We had 1,000 packages, whoop-de-doo. Right? We were announcing the fact that we had dropped new from the language. It was no longer needed. Very stark contrast from what we have today. And the announcement, we have multiple Flutter cons themselves. We have many Flutter conferences all over the world. We have enterprises announcing, every month their conversion to Flutter. At this point in time, this was at Mobile World Conference. This was an empty room. Literally a staged photograph. And this was luck that Google had nothing else to announce at Mobile World Conference. And so the press covered Flutter as though this was Google's big announcement. So that was the first 4 years of Flutter. A lot of luck, a lot of miracles, a lot of hard work. What happened then after Mobile World Conference is that we went from really pushing to getting pulled. This sort of happened overnight. We suddenly went vertical in terms of the adoption of Flutter. This is the Stack Overflow percentage of questions, but our internal metrics looked very similar. And it's not that like suddenly Flutter had made it. It meant that suddenly we had 1,000 things to do. We started getting noticed from inside teams. We worked for a long time. This was a many year partnership with the Google Assistant team. They had a problem. They had multiple bespoke operating systems that all were supposed to show the same UI. And they were using the web for this up until now. And it was slow. They had to put lots of RAM into these devices and have it run super slow. And so they came to us and said, hey, can you solve this problem with something that isn't the web? And we worked with them for many years. We got noticed inside by a team called GPay. GPay actually has many different apps, or had 3 different apps at the time. And the team that was responsible for India noticed and tried Flutter and really liked it. And this was important because this gave us a lot of credit inside Google. At the time, we were measured by how many SWEs were using Flutter. It created a ton of demand on the team for performance, testing, bug fixing. You can't buy, it turns out, performance testing. People will sell you access to their iPhones in the cloud, but there's 8 other programs running on those. You don't know from run to run if you're going to get results. So we had to build our own. This was a closet, down the way from our desks where our lab was for many years until the fire marshals got mad at us.
Yeah.
We had to work a ton on performance. One of the things that happened particularly as we worked on lower and lower end devices, as we worked on a wider scale of devices, we found that both that Dart had not been pushed in this way, but also some of the things that we had inherited from Chrome just didn't fit. When we cut Chrome down, we didn't cut everything away. We left some pieces, and some of those pieces were really good for Windows desktops and not very good for iOS phones. Things we would later fix. We also, because we had so many apps, we were working so much on platform polish, just finishing things so that they worked. And this was about 3 years that this phase went on. There was also a lot of other things going on in the Flutter community. This didn't actually come out of the Flutter team proper, but there was another team inside Google who realized that if you took the success that Flutter had in building a framework and the success that Dart had of working on the web, because Dart had hundreds and hundreds of engineers using Dart on the web inside Google. This doesn't exist outside the world, but there's so many people inside Google who use Dart on the web. And so it was a very well-trodden path, and someone thought, well, what if you smash them together? And this is what became Hummingbird. And it turned out it was very successful at certain things. And we started to see public customers use this as well. We saw Rive use this to good success. We saw iRobot use this to good success. And we saw Google use this for a whole bunch of variety of apps, many of them internal. And also because we had sold this vision, and this is, again, probably 6 years into the project, of build for any screen, we saw other companies come to us and said, hey, I bet this would work well on name the screen. And some of those were desktop. So Ubuntu, who I think is in this room, did a ton of work to bring Flutter to be successful on Linux and committed to Flutter being the way, the recommended way to write for their app store. Toyota did the same thing, which was that we would like to run this on our cars. And I say all this just again, that was so much that I remember dominating this phase was scaling the team, answering bugs. I mean, we're still answering bugs, 10 years in. But again, in contrast to today, this is what we were showing 7 years into the project, right? It starts to look like a real thing that you could, is safe to use. We have a couple brands on there that you recognize. A lot better than the spinning square. But what I felt like for this era was that it was still true that Flutter was not the safe choice, right? It was a bet. Many of you heard of us during this time. Many of you came to Flutter and made this happen, right? Like Flutter was not just a Google thing. It was, made by the people in this room. It was weird. It was high tech, but it was not about business. It was about making it work. Whoops. And so then we get to now, which I think of being as Flutter's sort of business age, where it works. And lots and lots and lots of people are using it. Flutter is very well established. You've seen these numbers from Google before. And we're no longer counting ones and twos. Like it used to be really exciting when we would announce, another order of magnitude. Like we're there. Flutter has millions of developers, millions of apps. And is all over the world, right? That we have multiple Fluttercons now. And it's everywhere. This is actually even an old slide. But it's just so many brands. It's funny, actually. Flutter has long had this history, and it continues to today, of being super popular all over the world, sort of with the exception of the United States. Right. And it's interesting to finally start to see that change. Continuation of that graph, it can continue to keep going up. Flutter has long been established as the safe choice now for you want to write multi-platform, right? It is the most popular multi-platform framework out there. And in contrast to green squares and maybe one Toyota after 7 years, these are all announcements just from this year, right? All brands you recognize, right? Geico moving to Flutter, Virgin Money moving to Flutter, LG shipping it on their TVs, Universal using it in their parks, Xiaomi using it for their car. A little different than it was before. And that, I believe, is because I think we have reached the point where adoption is now, Flutter is understood more by those who think about business, right? It has a demonstrable business value as opposed to hot reload, right? The hot reload is great, or the fun tech things that we did are great. And it's part of why I enjoy using the product every day. But it's also now understandable in, I get more for less and I don't have to sacrifice quality, which is something you can explain to your CEO. We're not done building and exploring, and there's a ton of interesting, fun things happening, both at Google and in the community, right? The shader stuff that came out a couple years ago, people are starting to play with it and do all sorts of fun things. The 3D stuff that's sort of just working its way out is going to be really cool to see. Macros, the promised land when they come, are going to be great. There's a ton of interest on server, which I don't say that with surprise, but it's just there's at least 5 companies or something in this space. There's so much being done. People are taking Flutter to new audiences. This is one of the things I love about what the Flutterflow folks are doing is, right, they are bringing Flutter to new devs who didn't even know they wanted Flutter, right? They're reaching a new, larger circle. And so much other innovation happening, again, both inside Google and in the wider sphere. So what does it mean for this room? What does a business era mean for the technologists in this room, right? I'm a software engineer, I've been a software engineer forever. I'm happy to hide in my desk and not have to deal with squishy business problems. But I think the things that it means for us is, again, sort of the change in people who are showing up. We've talked about this before. The change in our, new neighbors sitting next to us here at Fluttercon. The change in the businesses, showing up and their constraints and requirements. And I think that one of the things that I have had to work on in my time and my journey as an engineer is to learn to see like a business. There's a bunch of books on this about like the mom test and sort of explaining it to people who just don't care about the technology. Because the business just, we're the technologists in the room, right? And to the businesses, Flutter is a detail. I think someone explained this to me that, part of it is that many businesses are, there's an analogy in the physical world, right? Like a business needs a storefront, a way to reach customers, a way to talk to customers. But most people don't build the building themselves, right? That's not their core competency. And in the same sense, most businesses don't build their digital storefront themselves either, right? And the customers who go to that store, they don't care whether the hairdresser who's there built the building, right? They don't care what technology was used. They care that they get the business transaction that they came there for. But again, the businesses are starting to realize that if they use this brand of storefront, if they use this brand of technology, if they use people who know how to speak in that world, they get the cost, efficiency, and the quality, right? Because this has been around for many, many years, the promise of multi-platform. But it's always been the case that either you got the multi-platform cost efficiency or you got the quality. And the thing that I think this room has done is shown that it's possible to get both. And so it's changing so that Flutter has now become a safe choice, and they're choosing it, both for that efficiency advantage and the quality, as well as for, other reasons like having things that we like to work with. Anyways, another thing to think is that these businesses who are coming to Flutter, of which there are many, I get a lot of email from businesses who are saying, we have 5 apps written over 10 years. We're thinking about moving to Flutter. That's happening more. We're hitting that phase in the cycle. Is they want your help, right? Because these businesses are not the technologists, right? This room is. And many of them don't know that they want Flutter. They want you to explain it to them, right? We as technologists, I think a thing that I've had to learn is that we're not paid to build the technology. I wasn't paid to build web browsers. I wasn't paid to build Flutter. I was paid to solve a customer problem or a business problem. I think another thing that's happening as a result of the changing makeup of who's coming to Flutter is more different opportunities. So for example, we use Dart for everything, almost everything, at my company Shorebird. And we've constantly run into questions where just the Dart ecosystem isn't there yet. That's not to say it can't be, but we had to modify the money package, to be able to support the way. We had to write our own Redis package. We had to write our own Stripe wrapper. There's so much yet to do. And if you're a package author or like write packages, if you want to be paid to write these things, there's lots to do. There's also opportunities because businesses, the language they speak is money. Right? The thing that they have to give is money. And they want to pay for this software. They want to pay for these things to exist. I know this has been a persistent problem for as long as I've been engineering, that we don't have an open source model of how to pay for open source. But businesses do want to pay. And I think there's an opportunity for someone to continue to help us solve that for the Dart ecosystem. Businesses also need slightly different things. Like businesses care about the license of your package. They care about its pub score in some sense. Not that the business maybe doesn't, but it has to go through their security team, right? It has to get approved. And so these things maybe matter more than they did 5 years ago. I think a question that I ask sometimes is to use a recent example, right? Geico, we're writing, what would Geico think of this package? Could you imagine Geico using this package? And if the answer is no, you may want to change things. I think there's also a business opportunity for those of you in this room who are entrepreneurially inclined. If you are, you should talk to me. I'd love to help. But there's all of these businesses, and you're starting to see them pop up in the Flutter space. If you see a business that's X for React, or X for mobile, or X for desktop, or X for embedded, there is a Y for Flutter business. There's also tons of education services. It's different than it was. It's not like, how do you use Flutter 1.0? It's now, add to app, for example. One of the things that I was really late to get on board with as leader of Flutter was that everybody was using us add to app. It's still the case in 2024 that I'm sure a lot of businesses would be happy to pay you money to help them understand how to use their system in an add to app way. Yeah, and I guess I would say one more thing about Flutter jobs, because I get a lot of email from both job seekers and job advertisers, is that I think that Flutter job is not a thing that existed 5 years ago. Sure. It does exist now, but I think most of the time Flutter job is the wrong framing. Ideally, if I'm applying for a job, I'm solving a business problem, but also if I'm looking for a job, I probably want to look broader than Flutter. I don't know if this applies to this room, but as I said, I get a lot of mail about this. And I think, searching for jobs is just hard. The economy's been weird, but it's hard on both ends. It's hard to find jobs. It's hard to find people. Yeah, and I guess I would say one more thing about just the general thinking about solving the problem, solving the business problem. You take, for example, Shorebird. We didn't set out to solve code push. It wasn't our goal. The first thing we built was a Dart serverless function product. We ended up not shipping it. We set out to solve business problems. We would talk to businesses and say, what do you need? And the thing they kept telling us they need was code push. So we finally built it. Anyways, I will now opine briefly about things that I think are coming, changes that I think are coming to our world. I think one thing that's coming is that there are going to be more platforms. And I think one of the things that we've seen with Flutter is that it will eventually work well, but it probably isn't going to work well initially on these new platforms. I think these are good. VR, AR is one such example, but there will be more. We have designed Flutter so that it works well as long as we have access to a GPU and as long as we have access to a CPU. And this is why you see it, move to so many places. I think the web is also changing. This has been the case for 15 years, but maybe it'll take another 15 years, or maybe it'll take another 15 months. I don't know. But I think that the web is getting more and more appy. Users are more and more used to the idea of, hey, I'm going to use an app-like experience on the web as opposed to a document experience. And Flutter is very good at this. Even though it has been very hard to explain what Flutter Web does and what it is for, I think the web is changing in a direction that is good for Flutter. Another thing that I think is coming is more fragmentation. And as bad as that may be for users, as bad as that may be for the world, or maybe it's good, I don't know. I think it's very good for Flutter. This is the thing that constantly was what drove Flutter and saw so much use inside Google, was they needed to deliver the same experience across wildly different underpinnings. I think someone is also going to try and use Flutter as a default again. I mean, this has happened before. I think it will happen again. One of the things that we thought about a lot when we started Flutter was the failed Microsoft phone that was failing at the time. And we wanted it to be the case that the next Microsoft phone could use the web, because we were working on the web at the time. I think the next Microsoft phone, maybe not from Microsoft, might very well use Flutter. I think another thing that I feel like I should talk about as a sort of an elephant in the room is the Google risk. I know there are a lot of Googlers in this room. This has been something people have asked me about for 10 years, right? Since the inception of the project. I think the fears here are wildly overblown, but there is some real risk. And I think the risk comes not from the project being canceled or anything like that. But the risk comes from the fact that as a community, 80% of the funding or more comes from Google. And I think that if you're a business and 80% of your business all comes from one customer, you might want to diversify. And I think that one of the challenges and opportunities for us as a community is to continue to diversify, where our efforts come from. This is one of the things that I've been trying to work on, right? I am trying to build the Flutter company. I don't know that I'll be successful, but I could never turn Google into the Flutter company. It's already the ads company, or it's already the Chrome company, or it's already the Android company, right? I'm trying to build a company whose incentives are aligned with Flutter. And I guess one final note I will make about why I'm here, why we're here. I've been on the same quest for the last 15 years, which is I would like the world to stop writing the damn thing twice. And I think that the current incentives in the ecosystem are broken, such that platform companies want you to write for a platform, which is fine. That's their business. But I disagree with this because I want you to write for people. I want to write for people, not platforms. Right? This was an Apple slide that I doctored on Twitter, but Google could have made the same slide. And that's not malicious. That's aligned with their economic interests, right? But I want you to write for people. I want businesses to write for me as a person, not for the technology that I was holding in my hand. Anyways, that's what I had to say. Thank you for listening. Flutter has come a long way in 10 years. I think that the sea has changed. Businesses are very aware that Flutter is here, which is a lot of excitement and opportunity. I do hope you all enjoy this, maiden voyage of Fluttercon here in the United States. Thank you all for coming out. Do come check us out. If you have any questions, I'll be here all week, and I'm very reachable on the internet. So thank you all.